Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about dealing with judgmental people. More specifically, we're going to delve into what's actually happening when somebody is judging us, how are we perceiving that judgment, and ultimately, how can we approach the situation irrespective of what's happening in the world around us or from the people around us. How can we approach situations with an unshakable confidence and detachment from needing someone to show up a certain way, needing someone to not judge us, right? So that's the outcome here. Basically become unshakable. So let's dive into it. Now, when somebody's judging us, what's actually going on there? What's happening? So if we pick it apart, let's say somebody was to give us a compliment. Say, really like you, I think you've done a fantastic job in your work. Now, would we feel the same way if someone gave us a compliment as if somebody judged us and said, hey, you don't really know what you're doing, you should be doing things differently, or you're not capable of doing this thing, or whatever, right? So let's just stick with, you're not capable of doing this thing. Let's just say that's the judgment. Now, if we compare those two things side by side, someone giving you a compliment versus someone judging you, what's the difference? Well, the difference is that someone giving us a compliment means something good. We attach a good meaning to it. And someone judging us means something bad. We attach a bad meaning to it. So the difference is the meaning that we have chosen to attach to it. Okay, so if we can get that understanding right from the word go, we can begin to really uncover what's happening. And what's happening is that we are feeling negatively about a meaning that we have created from the situation. Someone says a judgmental thing, we translate that into what it means, and it's the meaning that upsets us. And so the question is the meaning that we choose to create and attach to situations, is the meaning within our control, or is it somebody else that controls that? Because the meaning's how we choose to perceive it, right? So the meaning's within our control. We can change it. And people don't, make us think certain things. People don't make us believe certain things. We choose those things ourselves. And so what we need to recognize is that if somebody is judging us, if we feel judged by someone else, it's because we're choosing to create that meaning. We're choosing the judgment. So it's actually us that's upsetting ourselves. Now, there's something I actually went through this morning. I'm doing something called timeline therapy at the moment with a lady called Catherine Kassab, and she's blown my mind. Like, this has just been the second session that we've done. I'll actually pop a bit of information in the description about her. She's kind of very much under the radar so far. She's not really publicly released her services, but she's the experience that I've gone through with this timeline therapy thing has been incredible. And what we basically went through this morning was, I uncovered, to do with my mum and dad splitting up when I was 7 years old, I uncovered this pattern that I've been very judgmental, quite subconsciously judgmental of other people. Like, I would have expectations of how I think people should show up in the world in order for me to respect them or value them genuinely. And a lot of that came from, which I realize is kind of mind-blowing, a lot of it came from an expectation that I had of my dad from when I was a little kid, that I saw my dad as like a superhero, he's amazing, he's awesome, all this kind of stuff. And then when mum and dad split up when I was 7 years old, a lot of those expectations that I had of him, which were completely unrealistic, obviously, as a little kid saying your dad's a superhero, dad's a human being. Of course, he's not going to be able to live up forever to those absurd expectations. Anyway, so when they split up, there was a mismatch in my head of how I perceived him to be versus how I perceived the situation that happened. And that mismatch formed a part of my identity of self, which was essentially running a story that said, I'm going to model who I want to be around who I think my dad should have been. And essentially I was judging my dad in that situation for things that, you know, were just things that happened, like stuff happens. But because of this judgment, I created this almost unattainable and impossible version of myself. And from me putting out that judgment onto him, it then created a counteracting fear of judgment from other people. So it's actually been quite a theme of my life. Again, I kind of like put on this front of, you know, I'm in control, I've got this, I'll figure everything out, like people count on me, which is actually another part of my personality that came from the same thing. But there was always an underlying fear of not being worthy, not being good enough. And this showed up through vulnerability a lot. Like I really don't like putting myself out there or being vulnerable or being seen to be upset or anything like that. I kind of subconsciously view that as weakness. And so for a large part of my life, I'd be the rock, the person in control, and other people rely on, because of this fear of vulnerability and weakness. And that has come from judging my dad and therefore fearing the same judgment from other people. It always goes full circle. And so the lesson here is, if we're fearing judgment from others and we're dealing with judgment from others, is first of all how we're perceiving it. We're choosing to perceive it as judgment. And if we're perceiving that as judgment from someone else, well, that's likely because we actually judge others in the same way. And that was a realization that I literally had this morning. Whatever we fear and whatever we perceive, it's coming back to us because that's the way that we perceive others. And so if we want to deal with judgment from other people, something that we have to be open to the possibility of is that we judge other people. Because if we didn't judge other people, judgment wouldn't even be a thing in our life, and we wouldn't perceive the actions of others as judgment, because we don't associate with judgment. Judgment just isn't a part of our life. You know, so that's often what's going on. And it takes courage to admit that and to see that. But the question to ask is, you know, if you're dealing with judgment from other people, ask, where in my life am I judging others in the same way? And don't look at it as just exactly situation specific. So if someone's saying you could do your career better and you're like, well, I'm really open to everyone in my career, I don't judge anyone else in my career. Well, maybe look at other areas. Maybe you judge in relationships. You know, maybe you judge, I don't know, brother, sister. Maybe you judge your friends. Maybe you judge whatever. You know, look at other areas of your life where you might be judgmental of others, where you have expectations of how others should show up. Because I had expectations of how I thought my dad should show up, and that created an expectation of how I should be, and that expectation of how I should be then translated into judgment of others of how they should be, and it was that judgment of others that created the fear of others judging me. It always goes full circle, okay? So hopefully that perspective helps. If you want to deal with judgment from others, well, it's us that's perceiving and creating meaning around the actions that they're taking, and we're choosing to perceive that as judgment. And if that's the case, it's probably because we're judgmental ourselves. And if we can own that, we set ourselves free. So look at where in your life this could apply. And then you can apply this as well, not just for judgment, but for all other negative emotions that we experience from others. You know, if others are angry towards us, it's probably because we're angry towards others. And we can go through this journey of self-development to start to release those negative emotions and release our expectations of others, and then others' expectations of us will also disappear in our minds. Hopefully this helps. So if you've got something from this, I would really love to hear from you. So please comment below if you have any thoughts, any other techniques that you've used to overcome judgment, or really any other perspective that you feel could be valuable for anyone else as well. All right, so please pop it below. People read the comments, so think about how we can add value to others. And if you have enjoyed this video, please don't forget to subscribe. You'll see that on the screen right now. That side, it's that side right there. Click subscribe, and that will make sure that you don't miss any of the future content that I put out around this kind of stuff, because I love this stuff. I'm sure you can probably tell. All right, so thanks for watching, and I will speak to you in another video. Bye for now.